"What the hell do you think you're doing in my bed?" Edward Hawthorne's steely voice rang out like a sledgehammer shattering the fragile glass of silence. He stood motionless in the doorway of the master bedroom, tall and rigid as a statue, his expression stern and blazing with anger. Rain dripped in small beads from his expensive coat, but Edward didn't care. His gaze was fixed entirely on the woman lying in his large bed, Olivia Bennett, the young tutor he'd hired to teach and care for his twin sons. Olivia jolted awake, her heart pounding, her eyes wide, not from guilt, but from the shock of meeting Edward's furious stare. Lucas and Liam lay peacefully on either side of her, their faces soft and calm for the first time in months of grief over their mother's death. Lucas clutched a small teddy bear, breathing steady and even, while Liam nestled close to Olivia, his tiny hand gripping hers as though terrified to wake from another nightly nightmare. "I can explain," Olivia whispered, lifting her hands gently, keeping her voice low so as not to wake the boys. She knew all too well the boys' suffering, the nightmares, the midnight screams, the sheer terror whenever darkness fell. Tonight they had begged her to stay. For the first time in months she felt their trust, and she couldn't refuse. But Edward gave her no chance. In a blind rage, his hand shot out, striking Olivia's face like a bolt of lightning. The sharp crack echoed through the room. Olivia staggered back, her right hand coming up reflexively to her burning cheek. She didn't cry out, not even a single tear fell. Her large eyes met Edward's, reflecting a hurt far deeper than any physical pain. A tense silence settled over the room. "I don't care what you have to say," Edward snarled, contempt dripping from his words. "You're fired. Get out of my house right now." Olivia stood frozen for a moment, breathing slowly returning to normal. Then, in a trembling but determined whisper, she said, "The children begged me not to leave. I stayed because, for the first time in months, Lucas and Liam finally felt safe. Can't you understand that? Get out, now!" Edward ground his teeth, his eyes ablaze as he pointed toward the door, his voice cutting like a blade and devoid of any compassion. Olivia bowed her head, leaned over, and pressed a gentle kiss first to Liam's forehead, then to Lucas's. Silently, she climbed off the bed, grabbed her shoes from the floor, and walked past Edward without another word. He made no move to stop her, offered no apology. At the foot of the stairs, the housekeeper, Mrs. Helen, looked up in stunned silence as Olivia passed, her eyes widening at the sight of Olivia's red, swollen cheek. Olivia gave her a small, curt nod and hurried out, leaving the grand mansion and its cold darkness behind. Outside, the storm raged on. Olivia tightened her thin coat around herself and stepped slowly along the wet stone path toward the great gate. Drizzle mingled with the tears that had finally begun to fall in silent tracks down her curly hair. She wasn't crying from pain, but from profound disappointment. She'd endured injustice too often in her life, but this was the worst, because she truly wanted to help Lucas and Liam, the boys she had come to love as if they were her own. Back in the master bedroom, Edward remained standing for a long moment, motionless. He then approached the bed slowly and studied his sons as they slept so peacefully it seemed unreal. The tension had vanished from Lucas's face. Liam lay breathing quietly, without a single cry or scream. A crushing wave of guilt swelled in Edward's chest, squeezing him with overwhelming remorse. He sat on the edge of the bed and buried his face in his trembling hands. Beside the mattress, he noticed a neatly folded note. Edward unfolded it and read the gentle words that stabbed his heart like an inescapable verdict. "If you cannot be there for your children, don't chase away the one who can." He read that line over and over. Each time his guilt dug deeper. He glanced at his reflection in the mirror, a man who'd lost his beloved wife and failed miserably in trying to be a good father. His grief had turned him cruel, cold, and uncontrollable. Now he realized he had destroyed the only chance to restore peace for his sons. Edward rose and moved to the window, staring out beyond the gate. Olivia's figure had vanished into the rain. For the first time, he felt powerless against the terrible mistakes he'd made. He wondered if there was any chance left to make things right or if he'd lost Olivia forever. And, more importantly, if he'd forfeited his final opportunity to help Lucas and Liam escape their lingering darkness. The rain fell steadily outside, but the real storm was raging within Edward Hawthorne. A painful misunderstanding, a grave mistake. Could he still find a way to atone and redeem himself to Olivia and his 2 boys? Those unanswered questions swirled in his mind, foreshadowing the challenging journey ahead if he wanted to reclaim what he had just lost. Outside, the cold rain still fell, tapping steadily against the window pane like invisible reproaches Edward could not tow. He stood motionless at the large window, his eyes fixed on the deep darkness beyond, searching for any trace of Olivia's silhouette as she slipped from sight. But all he saw was the thick, frigid night. Edward turned slowly, and his gaze landed on the bed where Lucas and Liam slept soundly. The boys were lost in a peaceful slumber, a luxury they hadn't known since their mother died. Guilt weighed on Edward's chest like a massive stone, each breath a searing agony. He had never felt so helpless and wretched. Softly, he closed the bedroom door and stepped into the hallway, hoping for a breath of fresh air to ease the suffocating tension in his chest. Instead of silence, he was met by the stern, reproachful eyes of Mrs. Helen, the loyal housekeeper who'd served his family since his childhood. "Sir," Mrs. Helen said, disappointment heavy in her voice, "this time you've gone too far." Edward frowned, but bowed his head without protest. For the first time in his life, he couldn't muster a proud retort to a rebuke from his own employee. His silence only strengthened Mrs. Helen's resolve as she continued, her tone trembling with emotion. "Lucas and Liam haven't slept this well in months. Olivia is the only one who managed it. Don't you see how grievous your mistake was?" Edward drew a deep, shaky breath, helplessness in his eyes as he faced Mrs. Helen. "I didn't mean to. When I saw her there, for a moment, I lost control." Mrs. Helen shook her head, her voice gentler but still firm. "Olivia's been here 2 months, sir. She's not just their tutor. She's the only one with the patience and compassion to understand their pain. Why didn't you give her a chance to explain?" Edward closed his eyes, each of Mrs. Helen's words piercing his heart like needles. He saw Olivia's pained face, her hand pressed to her swollen cheek, her eyes filled with disappointment as she left his home, an image replaying in slow motion. That painful truth forced him to wonder if his own grief over losing his wife had twisted him into someone cruel enough to harm others. "Where is she now?" Edward asked quietly, his voice thick with remorse. Mrs. Helen shook her head. "I don't know, sir, but after what you did, I doubt Olivia will readily forgive you. She didn't deserve such treatment." Edward bowed his head, overwhelmed by regret and powerlessness. He remembered his wife's death and the endless suffering Lucas and Liam had endured since. He'd tried everything, doctors, therapists, teachers, but none had the patience to help the boys through their grief and anger. Each one gave up, leaving Edward in despair. Until Olivia appeared. She was more than a young tutor with sound methods. In Olivia, Edward saw steadfast dedication, infinite patience, and a profound understanding of the boy's wounds. Step by step, she had coaxed Lucas and Liam to open their hearts. Over these 2 months, Edward had noticed positive changes. The screaming fits lessened and the nightmares grew fewer. Yet, in his irrational fury, he had driven away the only person who could save his sons from darkness. Edward knew what he must do. He had to make amends. He had to find Olivia and even beg her forgiveness, no matter how much pride had once held him back. He couldn't bear the thought of Lucas and Liam returning to nights of torment with the one person who helped them chased away. For the first time in months, Edward's eyes shone with determination. "Helen, tomorrow morning I'm going to find Olivia. Can you help me find out where she went?" Mrs. Helen looked surprised, but quickly nodded, her expression softening as she recognized his genuine remorse. "I'll do my best, sir, but if you find her, you must be prepared to humble yourself and apologize sincerely. It won't be easy for someone like Olivia to forgive after what happened." Edward nodded firmly. He knew the depth of the wound he'd inflicted on Olivia, but this time, he wouldn't let vanity or pride stand in the way of setting things right, for Lucas and Liam, for himself, and above all, for Olivia, the merciful woman he had so carelessly hurt. He stared into the night, silently promising he would do whatever it took to bring Olivia back, even if he had to give up everything. He understood this wasn't just about forgiveness. It was a battle with his own past, with the ghosts haunting his mind for so long. Turning back toward his room, his mind was in turmoil, but his resolve was unwavering. Tomorrow would be a difficult day, but Edward was ready to face it. Because now, there was only one goal in his heart: to find Olivia and right the greatest wrong of his life. Dawn broke very slowly, as if the light itself hesitated to pierce the heavy clouds left over from last night's storm. Edward sat silently by the wide living room window, his gaze distant as he stared at the rain-soaked treetops outside. His mind kept replaying the image of Olivia disappearing into the tempest. Nearly 2 days had passed since he'd driven her out of the house, yet the emptiness she'd left in the mansion now felt impossible to fill. Lucas and Liam, his twin sons, kept whispering questions about Olivia with worried voices. They neither cried nor screamed, but their eyes had grown hollow and fearful, as though the darkness was creeping back to haunt them. Edward felt as if his own foolish, irrational mistake was slowly suffocating his children's lives. He couldn't bear to look them in the eyes, which only deepened his sense of powerlessness. After hours of waiting, Mrs. Helen finally reappeared in the living room, her expression a mix of relief and concern. "I've found where Olivia usually goes, sir," she said gently but firmly. "A small community center on the outskirts. She volunteers there regularly, teaching disadvantaged teens." Edward sprang to his feet, hope lighting his eyes before doubt swiftly took over. "Do you think she'll forgive me?" "That depends on you, Edward," Mrs. Helen replied, meaning heavy in her tone. "Only genuine sincerity can open her heart again. Olivia is forgiving, but she also has pride. You'll have to prove that you've truly changed." Edward swallowed hard and nodded, taking a deep breath to steady himself. There was no turning back now. He had to face his mistake head-on, even if it meant swallowing his pride and apologizing for the first time in his life. The community center stood down a quiet suburban street, a modest, well-loved building surrounded by lush greenery. When Edward stepped from the car, he immediately spotted Olivia through a classroom window, standing before a small group of teens who listened intently. He lingered in the late afternoon light, noticing how different she looked here. Confident, strong, her face animated as she taught and engaged. His heart clenched at the realization of how deeply he'd hurt someone so remarkable. When the class ended, Olivia emerged and froze at the sight of Edward waiting under the awning. Surprise flickered across her features before a cool, guarded look settled in her eyes. "What are you doing here?" she asked, calm yet distant. Edward stepped forward, bowing his head in earnest. "Olivia, I know I'm late, but please, give me a chance to explain and to apologize for what I did." Olivia crossed her arms and met his gaze, unmoved. "You gave me no chance to explain before you threw me out. Why should I listen to you now?" "Because of Lucas and Liam." Edward's voice trembled with emotion. "I've never seen them as peaceful as they are when you're with them. I didn't recognize your value until I lost you. I was wrong, Olivia. I'm so sorry." She was silent for a long moment, studying him carefully. Here stood the proud man she thought she knew, now humbled and remorseful. His sincerity softened something in her. "If I come back, Edward," Olivia finally said, her tone measured and serious, "I have conditions, non-negotiable." "Anything," he replied without hesitation, "as long as you return to Lucas and Liam." "First," Olivia said, eyes locked on his, "I need your absolute respect. I'm not a servant, nor just an employee for you to insult at will. You must see me as a partner in caring for the boys." Edward nodded immediately. "Agreed." "Second," she continued, "my privacy is inviolable. You have no right to interfere in my personal life outside of work hours. I need my own space." "I understand, Olivia," Edward said, his gaze sincere. "Lastly, and most importantly," Olivia's voice grew firm, "I will never accept violence again. If it happens even once more, I will leave your lives for good and never return." A chill ran down Edward's spine at her final condition, but he recognized it as his last chance. He had no choice but to accept fully. "I promise," Edward said, every word heartfelt, "I will never hurt you again, Olivia. You have my word." Olivia studied his eyes, and for a fleeting moment she saw his genuine remorse, something she never thought he was capable of. At last she nodded. "I'll come back," she said softly, her tone easing only slightly but still firm. "But remember, this is your final chance, Edward." Edward returned her nod with a mixture of relief and deep gratitude. He understood that Olivia's forgiveness wasn't easily won. This time, he vowed, he would never lose her again, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As twilight settled, Edward felt a new light stirring in his heart, even though he knew the road ahead would be long and fraught with trials. Outside, the cold rain still fell, drumming steadily against the window pane like unseen reproaches from which Edward could find no refuge. He stood motionless by the large window, eyes fixed on the impenetrable darkness beyond, searching for any hint of Olivia's silhouette as she vanished from view. All he saw, however, was the dense, chilling night. Edward slowly turned away, his gaze drifting to the bed where Lucas and Liam lay fast asleep. The boys were lost in a rare, peaceful slumber, an extravagance they hadn't known since their mother's death. Guilt weighed on Edward's chest like a massive boulder, each breath a sharp torment. He had never felt so powerless and wretched. He gently closed the bedroom door and stepped into the hallway, hoping a change of air might ease the suffocating tension within him. Instead, he found himself face to face with Mrs. Helen's stern, reproachful gaze, the loyal housekeeper who had served his family since his childhood. "Sir," Mrs. Helen said, disappointment heavy in her voice, "this time you've truly gone too far." Edward frowned, then immediately bowed his head in silence. For the first time in his life, he could not summon a proud retort to a rebuke from his own staff. His silence only spurred Mrs. Helen to speak again, her voice trembling with emotion. Lucas and Liam haven't slept this well in months. Olivia is the only one who made that possible. Don't you see how grievous your mistake was?" Edward drew a deep, shuddering breath, helplessness in his eyes as he faced Mrs. Helen. "I didn't mean to. When I saw her there, in that moment, I lost control." Mrs. Helen shook her head, her tone softening but remaining firm. "Olivia's been here 2 months, sir. She isn't just their tutor. She's the only one with the patience and compassion to understand their pain. Why didn't you let her explain?" Edward closed his eyes, each of Mrs. Helen's words piercing his heart like needles. He replayed Olivia's pained expression, her hand pressed to her swollen cheek, her eyes filled with disappointment as she left his home. A slow motion nightmare burned into his mind. That painful truth forced him to wonder whether the grief over losing his wife had warped him into someone capable of such cruelty. "Where is she now?" Edward asked in a quiet, tortured voice. Mrs. Helen's shoulders lifted in a sorrowful shrug. "I don't know, sir. But after what you did, I doubt Olivia will easily forgive you. She didn't deserve to be treated that way." Edward lowered his head, overwhelmed by regret and despair. Since his wife's fatal accident, Lucas and Liam had suffered endless torment. He had tried everything: doctors, therapists, teachers, yet none had the patience to face the boy's wounds and relentless anger. Each helper had given up, leaving Edward trapped in his own despair, until Olivia arrived. She was more than just a young tutor with sound teaching methods. In Olivia, Edward saw unwavering persistence, deep empathy, and genuine care for the boy's shattered spirits. Step by step, she had coaxed Lucas and Liam to open their hearts. Over the past 2 months, Edward had witnessed real change. The screaming fits faded, the nightmares grew fewer. Yet, in that single, irrational moment of rage, he had driven away the one person who could lead his sons out of the darkness. Edward knew what he had to do. He needed to make amends. He had to find Olivia and, if necessary, beg her forgiveness, no matter how much pride he'd sacrificed. He could not bear the thought of Lucas and Liam returning to nights of terror, with the one person who truly helped them chased away by his own hand. Standing tall, determination sparked in Edward's eyes for the first time in months. "Helen, tomorrow morning I'm going to find Olivia. Can you help me learn where she went?" Mrs. Helen looked surprised, but quickly nodded, relief momentarily softening her features as she recognized his genuine remorse. "I will do my best, sir. But if you find her, you must be prepared to humble yourself and offer a truly heartfelt apology. It won't be easy for someone like Olivia to forgive what you've done." Edward nodded resolutely. He understood the depth of the wound he'd inflicted on Olivia, but this time he would not let vanity or pride stand in the way of making things right. For Lucas and Liam, for himself, and above all, for Olivia, the merciful woman he had so thoughtlessly hurt. He gazed into the night, silently vowing to do whatever it takes to bring Olivia back, even if it meant sacrificing everything. He knew this wasn't just about seeking forgiveness. It would be a hard battle with his own past and the ghosts that had haunted his mind for far too long. Turning back toward his room, his thoughts were in turmoil but his resolve unshakable. Tomorrow would test him, but Edward was ready. Because now there was only one goal in his heart: to find Olivia and undo the greatest mistake of his life. The last rays of the day filtered softly through the treetops, bathing the Hawthorne Estates garden in a warm, honeyed glow, as if nature itself wished to soothe the wounds of the past. Edward sat quietly at the window of his study, watching from a distance as Olivia sat beneath the old oak tree with Lucas and Liam. Her gentle smile mingled with the clear laughter of the boys, carrying faintly to where he stood and easing the usual tightness in his chest. Over the past few weeks, Olivia had become a beacon of warmth in this once chilly house. She was more than a teacher or caretaker. She had truly stepped into Lucas and Liam's world with boundless patience and kindness. Edward had doubted at first, but now he could see how completely she'd changed his sons. Their nightmares had faded, and the fear that used to grip them at dusk, or whenever he had to leave, was gone. On quiet afternoons like this, Olivia encouraged Lucas and Liam to share the thoughts they kept hidden deep inside. Edward often stood a little way off, listening to the profound sorrow in their voices as they spoke of their mother, whose sudden absence still haunted them. He'd never heard their feelings so clearly, so honestly. Olivia not only knew how to draw out genuine emotion from the boys, she also guided them gently toward acceptance, teaching them to face their pain rather than hide from it. One day, Edward overheard Lucas whisper to Olivia, "Miss Olivia, I think about my mom every single day. Sometimes it feels wrong to be happy, like I shouldn't laugh if she's not here anymore." His heart ached at those words. Edward was about to step forward, but Olivia simply placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder and spoke with loving wisdom. "Lucas, your mother would want you to be happy. She would never wish you to stay trapped in sadness. Missing her is natural, but you must never feel guilty for finding joy again, okay?" Lucas looked at her, a flicker of doubt passing through his eyes before relief replaced it. He nodded softly. "I understand, Miss Olivia." Edward lingered in the shadowed hallway, feeling a great weight lift from his shoulders, one he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. He realized that for all these years, he'd been unable to say those things to his sons himself, unable to help them heal because he hadn't faced his own wounds. From that moment on, Edward came to understand Olivia's importance to his family. She wasn't just caring for Lucas and Liam, she was quietly helping Edward confront his own brokenness. Every time he saw her with his boys, his heart warmed in a way he'd feared he'd never feel again. Yet that very warmth unsettled him. Whenever he watched Olivia smile, or heard her gentle voice echo through the house, he chastised himself for the past, how thoughtlessly he'd hurt her. He was afraid that revealing any of his own emotions now might wound her again or drive her away. So he kept his distance, hiding his feelings behind stolen glances and silent contemplation. But his heart could not stop reaching for Olivia. He saw her during family evenings, patiently listening as Lucas and Liam recounted school adventures or explaining complex emotions they couldn't name. Edward recognized that she was becoming a second mother to his sons, and that realization both comforted and tormented him, for he still could not bring himself to speak his heart. Late one night, after Olivia had tucked Lucas and Liam into bed with a bedtime story, Edward met her on the second-floor landing. The dim nightlight softened her features, highlighting the depth in her eyes that he found himself unable to forget. "I wanted to thank you again, Olivia," Edward said quietly, sincerely. "I never thought my boys could return to themselves like this. You have brought magic back to our family." Olivia smiled, her eyes gentle yet steady. "Edward, that magic wasn't mine. It came from Lucas and Liam's resilience. They only needed a little love, understanding, and trust to begin healing." Edward gazed into Olivia's eyes, words choking on his tongue. He simply nodded. "You're right, I still have so much to learn." "We all do, Edward," Olivia replied softly, compassion and kindness shining through her gaze. "What matters is that you recognize it. I believe if you truly want to, everything can grow better from here." Edward watched her walk away, a warmth blossoming in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt genuine peace returning to his family. thanks to Olivia. Yet, despite the strength of his feelings, he couldn't overcome the invisible barrier in his heart. He dared not confess, dared not reveal too much of himself, fearing he might break the fragile bond they had so carefully rebuilt. Edward knew he needed more time. Time to open his own heart, to forgive himself, and to find the courage to love once more. And in his heart, one truth was growing ever clearer. Olivia had not only helped his sons find their faith again, she was guiding him back to the true meaning of life itself. The tranquil days flowed by quietly, like a gentle river winding through a valley, carrying away old wounds and gradually restoring life at the Hawthorne estate to a calm it seemed to have lost. From the living room window, Edward often watched Lucas and Liam at play under the warm sunshine, their laughter ringing through the garden like the purest melody. He knew exactly who was behind this miraculous recovery, none other than Olivia. Evening dinners together became indispensable for their little family, and Edward began to appreciate more deeply the value of those simple moments. He watched Olivia discreetly and realized that her influence went far beyond helping his sons. She had unknowingly transformed him from the inside out. In Edward's mind, an idea slowly took shape and grew stronger, something meaningful that reached beyond his own family, something that could help other children suffering from psychological scars that had yet to heal. One weekend afternoon, after Olivia had wrapped up a special lesson with Lucas and Liam in the garden, Edward approached her with a serious expression. "Olivia, may I run something by you?" he asked, his voice warm but hesitant. Olivia looked up at him, surprised by the rare tension in Edward's demeanor. She offered an encouraging smile. "Of course, Edward. What's on your mind?" Edward took a deep breath, met her eyes, and began, "I've been truly impressed by all you've done for Lucas and Liam. Not just me, Mrs. Helen and everyone else has recognized your remarkable gift for helping emotionally wounded children. I've been thinking it would be a shame to stop here." Olivia's brow furrowed as she listened, curiosity and a touch of uncertainty in her gaze. "I'm considering founding a special healing and education center for children who've experienced loss and trauma, just like our boys," Edward continued, his voice growing more confident and passionate. "I want you to help found and run it. I've even thought of a name, the Hawthorne, Bennett Center, to honor what you've done and the humane values we stand for." Olivia's eyes widened at his proposal, emotions flickering between surprise and deep gratitude. She sat down slowly on a stone bench beneath the tree, gathering her thoughts before she spoke. "Edward, I'm truly moved by this idea," she said. "But creating a healing center isn't simple. It's more than a charity. It must really understand what these children need. I want to be sure you grasp the principles and values I believe in before we move forward." Edward nodded without hesitation, sincerity shining in his eyes. "Please, tell me everything. I'm listening." Olivia inhaled softly, her gaze drifting over the sunlit garden. Then she began. "First, we must place human dignity above all else. We can't merely provide instruction. We have to deeply understand each child's pain and psychological wounds. I believe every child deserves to be loved, to be truly heard, and, most importantly, to heal from the inside out." Edward's eyes lit with determination and enthusiasm. "I couldn't agree more, Olivia. That's exactly the vision I want." "Second," Olivia continued, her tone growing more serious, "the center's operation must remain free from personal gain or external interference. We need to create an absolutely safe environment where children feel protected, respected, and secure enough to open their hearts." "I understand," Edward replied, unwavering. "I promise this will be an independent center, unaffected by anyone else's agenda. I only want to build a safe haven where every wounded child has the chance to heal." Olivia smiled, satisfied, and finally nodded. "I trust you, Edward. If you truly commit to those values, I'll stand by you." Edward's joy was unmistakable, his heart swelling with an unprecedented sense of purpose. He took Olivia's hand, gratitude and sincerity shining in his gaze. "Thank you, Olivia. I'll do everything in my power to ensure the Hawthorne Bennett Center becomes a place of hope and healing for other children, just as you saved Lucas and Liam." In the days that followed, Edward dove into preparations for the new center. He leveraged his connections and, alongside Olivia, sought out experienced psychologists, dedicated teachers, and genuinely committed sponsors. They spent countless hours planning every detail, selecting each team member with care to ensure they all shared the center's high-minded values and goals. Lucas and Liam were thrilled by the new venture. They excitedly sketched pictures and wrote down their ideas for the center, helping Olivia with every small task for the ribbon cutting ceremony. Edward watched from a distance, pride and joy written all over his face as he saw his boys opening up, eager to support other children who had suffered as they once did. In Lucas and Liam's hopeful eyes and in Olivia's unwavering dedication, Edward finally found a new purpose in life, one not only about healing past wounds, but also about embracing a future built on the noblest human values. And deep in his heart, Edward knew this. The Hawthorne Bennett Center was more than just a new project. It was the beginning of a profoundly meaningful journey, a journey of healing and hope, not only for Lucas and Liam, but for himself as well. The first days of the Hawthorne Bennett Center were filled with excitement, and everything progressed more smoothly than anyone had dared hope. Olivia and Edward worked tirelessly, meticulously planning every detail together, and carefully selecting the most dedicated staff so that each child would receive the attention and healing they needed. Lucas and Liam, too, grew more mature by the day, eagerly pitching in and filling the Hawthorne estate with joy and hope. But just as things seemed to be running perfectly, a sudden shock struck like a storm, uprooting all the newfound peace. Early one morning, Edward received a legal notice delivered by the attorneys of his late wife's parents, Samuel and Margaret Clayton. The lawsuit demanded custody of Lucas and Liam, accusing Edward of being unfit to raise his own sons. Edward sat motionless in his study, the letter trembling in his hand with every breath. He had never expected the Claytons to take this step after years of silence and indifference toward their grandchildren. The grief he still carried from losing his wife surged anew, now tinged with anger and helplessness. That very evening, Edward went to find Olivia and share the news. He found her in the library, quietly reading with Lucas and Liam. "Olivia, I need to talk to you," he said, forcing his voice to stay calm even as worry showed in his eyes. Olivia gently closed her book and sent the boys off to play. Once the library door clicked shut behind them, she turned to him with concern. "What's wrong, Edward?" "Is it serious?" she asked. Edward sighed and handed her the letter, his gaze troubled. "My ex-in-laws are suing me for custody of Lucas and Liam. They claim I'm unfit to be their father." Olivia quickly skimmed the letter, her expression growing steely. She gripped the paper and looked Edward in the eye. "You're not alone in this," she said. "I'll stand by you, and by Lucas and Liam." For a long moment Edward was silent, fear knotting his stomach. "Olivia, they're going to bring up the past, when I hit you, to use against us. Are you sure you want to fight this battle?" Olivia met his gaze without hesitation, her eyes firm yet warm. That was the past. Today it's about Lucas and Liam's future. I won't let them lose the happiness we've built." The first court hearing was charged with tension. The courtroom buzzed with curious, judgmental glances. Facing Edward and Olivia sat the Claytons, wealthy, powerful, and shrewd. Samuel Clayton, sharp and icy, looked Edward up and down. Margaret carried herself with haughty assurance. Clayton's lawyer kicked off the proceedings with harsh accusations. Edward Hawthorne suffers from psychological instability, is unfit to care for children, and has allowed Lucas and Liam to endure severe emotional crises for far too long. Edward clenched his fist under the table, knowing the claims were baseless. Olivia sat beside him, unwavering, her eyes locked on him as if to lend strength. When Olivia rose to testify, her clear, strong voice filled the room. "Your Honor, I am Olivia Bennett, a specialist in helping emotionally traumatized children. I have personally cared for Lucas and Liam. I can attest that Edward Hawthorne is a loving, responsible father who has transformed himself for the sake of his sons. Thanks to him, Lucas and Liam are now emotionally stable." Her confident declaration stunned the courtroom into silence, until Clayton's lawyer struck back, voice cold as steel. "Miss Bennett, are you certain Mr. Hawthorne is an ideal parent, when you yourself were a victim of his violence?" The question hit Olivia like a blow, and Edward's face went pale. Samuel Clayton smirked, sensing victory. The lawyer pressed on. "We have proof that Edward Hawthorne assaulted Miss Bennett in his own home. Your Honor, can a man with such a violent past truly be entrusted with the care of two vulnerable young children?" A tense hush fell, whispers spreading through the room. Edward felt the world collapse around him, remorse and fear in his eyes, but Olivia, with extraordinary resolve, stood firm. She drew a steady breath and replied, voice strong yet compassionate. "Edward made grave mistakes, but what matters most is that he acknowledged them and has worked tirelessly to atone. I have witnessed his genuine transformation day by day. It is thanks to him that Lucas and Liam are now happy, healthy boys. Our focus must be on their future and their healing, not on dredging up the past for personal gain." Every eye turned to Olivia, recognizing the moral strength of the young woman standing before the bench. Yet the Claytons were not deterred. Margaret rose, voice trembling with dramatic flair. "Miss Bennett's words are admirable, but could her personal feelings for Mr. Hawthorne be coloring her judgment?" Her sharp challenge plunged the courtroom back into a breathless silence. Edward realized then that this fight would be far tougher than he ever imagined. The air in the courtroom hung heavy, like an invisible rope tightening around everyone's throat. After Margaret Clayton's incisive question, all eyes turned to Olivia. In that suffocating silence, Olivia straightened her posture, took a deep breath, and her eyes shone with resolve tempered by compassion. She looked Margaret squarely in the eye, then slowly addressed the judge, her voice clear, sincere, and profound. "Your Honor, I acknowledge that I was once the victim of Edward's mistake, one he has carried with remorse ever since. But I am not here to justify his past errors. I am here to speak about the genuine transformation I have witnessed with my own eyes and felt in my heart." Olivia's gaze softened as it moved to Edward, sitting beside her with an expression of deep regret. Edward hardly dared to lift his head, shame knotting his chest. Olivia continued, her voice filled with emotion yet unwavering. "I came to the Hawthorne family as their tutor, but it didn't take long for me to see the immense pain Lucas and Liam suffered after losing their mother. These boys battled grief and nightly nightmares with no one to help, until Edward, a father who had made mistakes, opened his heart, and chose to change. She paused, drawing in a steadying breath before speaking again, her voice now visibly moved. I have seen a completely different Edward, a devoted, loving father. He willingly set new rules to protect Lucas and Liam's fragile spirits. He sacrificed work meetings so he could be at the dinner table every night, ready to listen to his son's feelings. I have watched Lucas and Liam return, day by day, to being confident, joyful, strong children. Everyone in the courtroom leaned in to hear Olivia's testimony. Even Margaret Clayton, once so haughty and cold, showed a flicker of doubt at the sincerity in Olivia's words. Samuel Clayton still regarded Olivia with a steely gaze, but beneath it, a flicker of uncertainty began to glow. Had he been right to dredge up that painful past? Edward's lawyer then rose, closing Olivia's testimony with firm conviction. Your Honor, no father is perfect, but Edward Hawthorne has worked tirelessly each day to become the best father he can be. We should not dismantle these children's happiness and stability over past mistakes that Edward has acknowledged and earnestly corrected. After tense deliberation, the judge finally spoke, his solemn voice ringing clear and causing Edward's heart to pound. Having heard all parties and carefully reviewed the evidence and witness statements, I find that the well-being and happiness of these children are paramount. It is undeniable that Edward Hawthorne made serious mistakes in the past. However, it is equally clear he has demonstrated sincere, sustained efforts to change and atone. Most notably, thanks to Ms. Olivia Bennett's dedicated support, Lucas and Liam have made remarkable emotional and psychological progress. I hereby rule that Edward Hawthorne retains legal custody of his sons, Lucas and Liam Hawthorne. A soft, heartfelt round of applause broke out among Edward and Olivia's supporters. The Claytons sat back, their faces clouded with disappointment and anger, yet powerless to contest the verdict. When the hearing ended, Edward turned to Olivia, his eyes brimming with gratitude. I don't know how to thank you enough, Olivia. Without you, I would have lost Lucas and Liam. Olivia smiled gently, warmth in her eyes. Edward, I did this because I believe in you, and because I believe everyone deserves a second chance when they truly change. Deeply moved, Edward nodded, then made an impulse decision in that moment. He looked at Olivia with unprecedented seriousness. Olivia, I want you to be Lucas and Liam's legal guardian alongside me. You have cared for them better than I ever could. You deserve that right. Olivia's eyes widened in surprise, words failing her for a moment. Edward, are you sure? That's a huge decision, and Edward gently interrupted, taking her hand with all the sincerity he could muster. Olivia, this is more than gratitude. It's the truest acknowledgement I can give you. You didn't just save my children, you saved me. Tears of joy began to fall down Olivia's cheeks. She nodded quietly, her heart full of a warmth she could hardly put into words. Then I will stand by you and the boys, and together we'll build an even brighter future. Hand in hand, they walked out of the courtroom, greeted by admiring, understanding looks from friends and colleagues. Lucas and Liam ran forward, embracing them both, their laughter ringing through the courthouse halls. Watching his sons beam beside Olivia, Edward knew he had made the best decision of his life. From that day on, Olivia would not only be his trusted partner, but also Lucas and Liam's second legal mother. In the depths of his heart, a simple yet profound joy began to bloom, marking a new beginning not just for Lucas and Liam, but for all of them. The peaceful, happy days following the trial slipped by in calm. The Hawthorne Bennett Center grew more successful every day, quickly becoming a beacon of hope for countless families and children suffering from emotional trauma. Olivia and Edward poured their hearts into running and expanding the center, determined to share its deeply human values throughout the community. Yet, at the very height of their success, just as the center's achievements began to attract media attention, a silent but venomous darkness emerged, set on destroying everything they had built. One quiet morning, Olivia sat in her office drafting a new lesson plan when a panicked staff member burst in clutching a broadsheet newspaper. "Miss Bennett, you have to see this right now," the employee stammered. Olivia snatched the paper. The front page headline screamed, "The Truth About Olivia Bennett. A Fake Savior?" Her heart stopped as she scanned the cold, venomous copy below. An anonymous tipster reveals that Olivia Bennett, founder of the Hawthorne Bennett Center, is in fact a con artist with a mysterious past. She's allegedly exploited the love and trust of millionaire Edward Hawthorne for personal gain. Can the center that hundreds of families entrust with their children truly be safe? Or is it a front for darker schemes? Trembling, Olivia crushed the newspaper in her hands. Edward appeared in the doorway, shock and confusion etched on his face. "Olivia, I saw the headlines. What's going on?" he asked. Olivia shook her head, pain in her eyes. "I don't understand. I've never done anything to be ashamed of." Edward put a comforting hand on her shoulder, squeezing gently. "I believe you, Olivia. We'll get to the bottom of this. Don't let them destroy the good you've done." But his reassurance couldn't stem the gathering storm. Within days, the rumors raced across social media. Every news outlet pounced. Fearful parents withdrew their children en masse, and the Hawthorne Bennett Center plunged into its most serious crisis yet. Then a shadowy figure emerged. Jeremy Maddox, an ambitious reporter who'd long held a grudge against Edward. Maddox seized upon the vague allegations and appeared on every news broadcast, accusing Olivia of scamming the Hawthorne family out of wealth and influence. Determined to dig into her past, Maddox held a live, confrontational press conference. Why won't Olivia Bennett face the truth about her own history? Could it be because that history is riddled with deceit and exploitation? The public deserves to know. His words spread like wildfire, and Olivia found herself at the center of a vicious backlash. The center's phone lines and inbox were flooded daily with hateful, accusatory messages. Olivia felt as though all her dedication had been for nothing, her heart torn by every cruel word. In desperation, Edward set out to discover who was behind the slander. One late night, after hours of online sleuthing, he received an anonymous text from an unknown number. "Edward Hawthorne, don't you realize someone close to you is betraying you? Check carefully every person who's ever stood by your side, past and present." Edward's pulse raced as suspicion crept over him. He launched a discreet investigation, and soon the truth surfaced. The leaker feeding Maddox was none other than Robert Stanton, Edward's longtime assistant whom he'd fired years ago for financial fraud. Harboring a bitter grudge, Robert had sworn to destroy everything Edward had built, targeting Olivia, the one person Edward cared for most, as his weapon of revenge. Armed with this knowledge, Edward arranged a tense face-to-face meeting with Robert at a nearly deserted cafe. Locking eyes with his former aide, Edward demanded coldly, "Why are you doing this, Robert? Olivia has nothing to do with our quarrel." Robert sneered, bitterness twisting his voice. "She was your weakness, Edward. I lost everything because of you. Now I want you to feel that same pain, watching the person you love have the world turn against her." Edward forced himself to stay calm. "I won't let you tear down what Olivia has built. We'll expose the truth, and we will not bow to lies." Robert chuckled frostily. you think you'll escape this storm unscathed. Once your reputation is ruined, you'll never get it back." Edward left the meeting with a heavy heart. He knew that Olivia and the Hawthorne, Bennett Center, faced their toughest battle yet, not just against false accusations, but against reclaiming the public's trust. Late that night in his study, Edward took Olivia's hand, his eyes resolute. "Olivia, no matter what happens, I stand with you. We'll weather this crisis together." Olivia met his gaze, moved through, weighed down by pain and pressure. She understood that this fight wasn't merely to save the center. It was to defend their truth, their integrity, and the love they had forged. Their battle to protect the Hawthorne, Bennett Center, had only just begun, and Olivia and Edward were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Amid the fierce storm threatening to engulf the Hawthorne, Bennett Center, Olivia knew she could no longer stay silent. The slanderous rumors were growing more hateful by the hour, spreading like wildfire and threatening to burn down everything they had built with sweat, tears, and devoted hearts. In one of the tensest moments, Edward squeezed Olivia's hand, his eyes full of both worry and resolve. "Olivia," he said, "perhaps now is the time for you to tell your own story. No one can do it better than you." Olivia looked deep into his eyes, feeling the trust and courage he was placing in her. She nodded, determined to face the gathering storm head-on. A few days later, a packed press conference was held in the main auditorium of the Hawthorne, Bennett Center. Hundreds of journalists and media crews arrived early, their curious, skeptical gazes fixed on Olivia as she stepped up to the podium. She stood tall, her confidence and calm shining through in an almost startling way. At the back of the room, Edward watched quietly, his heart pounding, but his faith in Olivia never wavered. Olivia took a deep breath and began, her clear voice echoing through the hall. "Today I stand before you, not to apologize or make excuses, but to share a truth I have never had the chance to tell. I was born and raised in a poor family in suburban Atlanta. My parents died when I was very young, and I spent my childhood moving through multiple foster homes. Throughout those years, I endured neglect, loneliness, and the pain of abandonment." Her eyes glistened but remained steadfast. She continued, her tone both honest and moving. "It was those bitter experiences that taught me to understand deeply the pain of children suffering from psychological wounds. I chose to become a teacher, not for fame or gain, but because I wanted to spare other children from the suffering I knew so well. I have never hidden or misrepresented anything about my past." Olivia scanned the rows of cameras, her voice growing stronger and more resolute. "I categorically deny the malicious allegations that I exploited Edward Hawthorne's kindness and trust. I came into his family with a sincere heart, and I stand here today because I believe in the truth. Every effort and ounce of dedication I have poured into this center comes from genuine love for Lucas, Liam, and the hundreds of children we have helped." The room fell silent, broken only by the sound of camera shutters and hushed whispers. Suddenly, a woman in the front row stood up. Elizabeth Morgan, the mother of one of the children Olivia had rescued from severe depression. Mrs. Morgan spoke with heartfelt emotion, her voice cracking with gratitude. "I want everyone here to hear this. My daughter fell into a deep psychological crisis after her father's death. No other center would take her in. No one could help her except Miss Olivia Bennett. She saved my daughter's life and brought hope back to our family. I do not believe those vicious lies." Her sincere testimony washed over the auditorium like a wave. Then a father rose to share his own story of a son pulled back from the brink of despair thanks to Olivia's care. One by one, parents and children whom Olivia had helped spoke up, affirming her dedication, compassion, and integrity. Their heartfelt words transformed the atmosphere. Doubtful glances gave way to understanding and empathy. Edward saw in Olivia's eyes the fierce conviction and extraordinary courage that had drawn him to her in the first place. Not long after that emotional press conference, Edward and Olivia enlisted the help of a seasoned private investigator to uncover the source of the smears. Their search revealed a shocking truth. The mastermind behind the campaign of defamation was Patrick Hamilton, a former business partner of Edward's. Jealous of Edward's success and the respect he commanded, especially for winning the affection of someone as remarkable as Olivia, Patrick had hired Jeremy Maddox to write the lurid articles and enlisted Robert Stanton, nursing old grudges, to spread lies intended to destroy Edward's reputation and sabotage the center. Armed with this evidence, Edward confronted Patrick in his opulent office. Looking him in the eye, Edward demanded, "Why are you doing this, Patrick? Why target Olivia and our center? We've never wronged you." Patrick sneered, bitterness etched on his face. "You always win. You always come out on top. I couldn't stand watching you achieve everything I wanted. Success, admiration, and now a wonderful woman like Olivia Bennet. I wanted you to feel what it's like to lose everything precious." Edward shook his head firmly. "You're wrong, Patrick. You think lies and envy can destroy us? The truth will always prevail." Within days, the evidence was made public. The media retracted the false stories. Patrick Hamilton and his accomplices faced legal consequences, and Olivia and the Hawthorne Bennett Center were fully vindicated. In the aftermath of the crisis, the center not only regained its standing, but earned even deeper trust from the community. Standing side by side, Edward and Olivia found their bond and their commitment to each other stronger than ever. In the days that followed, Edward took Olivia's hand and softly said, "We've weathered everything together. Thank you for never giving up." She smiled, her eyes warm. "We succeeded because we believed in each other." And so they realized that the very storms they endured had forged their love and resolve anew. The Hawthorne Bennett Center emerged not only as a symbol of healing, but as a testament to the power of courage, faith, and genuine love. When the fiercest waves of the recent crisis finally receded, a gentle calm returned to the Hawthorne Bennett Center. Olivia and Edward resumed nurturing new plans, pouring unprecedented passion into healing the children's wounds. Yet, just as everything seemed back on track, Olivia received news that made her heart lurch once more. One late afternoon, as the sunset bathed the center's grounds in a soft glow, Olivia sat quietly in her office, organizing files for the new arrivals. Suddenly, her phone rang. When she answered, the voice on the other end was both unfamiliar and achingly familiar. "Olivia, you might not recognize my voice, but it's me, Mom, it's Julia." Olivia's heart stopped. She barely drew a breath, her eyes widening as painful childhood memories flooded back. All her life she had believed her parents were dead. Now, the surprising claim that Julia was her mother shattered her world. A few days later, Olivia, trembling with anxiety, agreed to meet her birth parents at a small, quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. When she arrived, she immediately spotted two elderly figures huddled in a corner booth. The man's hair was snowy white, his eyes heavy with regret. The woman, Julia, looked at Olivia with tears brimming, her expression equal parts hope and fear. "Olivia, my daughter, I've waited my whole life for this moment," Julia said, her voice shaking as she clasped her hands for courage. Olivia seated herself slowly, her heart aching though her face remained composed. Her voice trembled, yet sounded clear. Why are you coming to me now?" Her father, James Bennett, bowed his head in shame. "We don't deserve your forgiveness, but you deserve the truth. We made the greatest mistake of our lives when we abandoned you. We were too poor and desperate then, afraid we couldn't raise you and would only doom your life to hardship." Julia hurried to continue, tears falling freely. "Not a single day went by that I didn't think of you or regret our choice. I only dreamed of seeing you again, just once, to tell you how sorry I am." Olivia sat in silence, her eyes brimming with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to run from that table forever. Another part longed to understand why they had done it. Finally, she spoke, her tone gentle but charged with pain. "Do you know how I felt growing up? I wondered every day why I wasn't worthy of love, why I was abandoned. That question became my driving force. I spent my life helping children in similar situations. But standing here now, I realize I still haven't fully healed my own wound." Julia broke down in sobs, grasping Olivia's hand. "I know I have no right to ask for your pardon quickly, but please give us a chance to make amends for our past." Their meeting ended in suffocating silence. Olivia left the cafe feeling hollow and contemplative. At home, Edward immediately sensed her distress. Gently taking her hand, he said, "Olivia, sometimes in order to keep healing others, we must first face and heal ourselves. Whatever you decide, I'm here with you." In the days that followed, Olivia reflected deeply. She realized forgiveness wasn't just a gift to her parents, it was a gift to herself, a way to step out of the shadows of her past. She arranged to meet her parents again, this time at the Hawthorne, Bennett Center, where many children watched her with curious, empathetic eyes. Stepping onto the lawn, Olivia spoke, voice trembling yet resolute. "Mom, Dad, the past cannot be changed, but today I choose to forgive so that I can heal. I'm willing to open my heart so we can begin to rebuild our relationship, even though it will be difficult." James and Julia wept with relief and shame, wrapping Olivia in a long overdue embrace. The children at the center witnessed this moment, a powerful lesson in compassion, forgiveness, and the true strength of healing. That evening, Lucas and Liam slipped into Olivia's arms and whispered, "Mom, Olivia, you're so brave. We're proud of you." Overcome with joy, Olivia realized her decision to forgive not only healed her own heart, but also inspired and empowered every child in her care. From that day on, James and Julia Bennett became devoted volunteers at the center. Every day they worked to atone for their mistake, demonstrating the transformative power of forgiveness. Edward held Olivia close that night and whispered, "You did something extraordinary, Olivia. The boys and I are so proud of you." She smiled and replied softly, "I learned that only by facing and forgiving the past can we truly step into a brighter, more meaningful future." Looking out the window at the gentle sunset, Olivia knew her heart's wound had finally begun to heal, opening a new chapter of hope and happiness, not just for herself, but for everyone she loves and cares for at the Hawthorne, Bennett Center. After her courageous decision to face and forgive her birth parents, Olivia seemed to step into a new chapter of her life, her spirit lighter and stronger than ever. The Hawthorne, Bennett Center, long a second home to countless children, now flourished even more, inspired by the moving story of Olivia's journey. With its deep commitment to healing and genuine compassion, the center became a beacon of positive change in the community. Major universities across the country began to take notice of Olivia's unique educational approach, one that emphasized psychological healing and unlocking the inner strengths of children who had nearly lost their faith in life. The impact of the Hawthorne, Bennett model quickly spread beyond its original scope. One bright morning, Olivia received a special invitation from Harvard University, asking her to speak about her distinctive psychological education methods and share her hands on experience and healing inspiration with thousands of top students. Joining her on this special trip was Belle Harris, once Olivia's very first student and a young woman rescued from the darkness of her own past. Now, grown into a confident, strong advocate, Belle had become Olivia's right hand. Standing at the podium in a vast lecture hall before thousands of Harvard students, Olivia and Belle felt the curious, eager eyes of the intellectual audience upon them. Olivia spoke first, her voice gentle yet resonant throughout the hall. "Dear students, you have likely heard many theories of education and psychology, but I am here to share the most practical lesson I learned from my own painful experiences. To truly help a child heal from trauma, you must see them with your heart, not just your mind." Belle followed with confident emotion. "I was once a child the world turned away from. But because someone truly saw me, understood me, and chose to stay, I found light in my life. That person was Miss Olivia Bennett. Today, I stand not as a victim of circumstance, but as a survivor, someone ready to bring positive change to others." Their heartfelt words moved the entire audience. One by one, students and faculty asked questions, and Olivia answered each with enthusiasm, depth, and sincerity. The event was a resounding success, swiftly heralded in the press and spreading nationwide. After the lecture, Olivia and Edward received collaboration requests from many prestigious institutions: Stanford, Yale, Princeton, Columbia, eager to learn the Hawthorne-Bennett model. Their psychoeducational approach became a phenomenon among professionals, sparking a new movement in child psychology that brought great hope to society. With Edward's strong support and Olivia's real, world experience, the Hawthorne-Bennett Center rapidly expanded, opening dozens of branches across the states. Each new location became a sanctuary for countless children struggling with severe emotional challenges. The center's extraordinary success fueled envy among some old adversaries. But this time, Olivia and Edward stood stronger than ever. Their former critics dared not attack openly. They could only mutter their discontent in the shadows. Then, one day, Patrick Hamilton, the man behind the center's greatest crisis, requested a private meeting with Edward, bearing a letter of apology and heartfelt regret. "I was wrong, Edward. What I thought was victory was actually blind jealousy. Watching you succeed, I realized what I destroyed was exactly what society needs most. Please forgive me, you and Olivia." Edward regarded Patrick with stern yet compassionate eyes. "We never saw you as an enemy, Patrick. What Olivia and I do is always about building up, never tearing down. Knowing you understand that is success enough for me." Patrick bowed his head and left silently. Later, Edward told Olivia about the meeting. She smiled softly, her voice warm and gentle. "We don't need revenge, Edward. Our greatest achievement is the healing and positive change we bring to our community." Before long, Olivia and Belle were invited to speak at the International Conference on Child Psychology in Geneva, Switzerland. Standing before thousands of global experts, Olivia once again showcased the Hawthorne-Bennett Center's powerful healing story drawn from her own life. Edward accompanied Olivia on every trip, remaining her quiet but steadfast support. With each passing day, their bond deepened and strengthened, unbreakable by any challenge. Every evening, after the center had quieted down, Olivia would sit by the window, pride and emotion shining in her eyes as she reflected on the long journey she had traveled. Edward would gently wrap his arms around her from behind and whisper, You've done something extraordinary, Olivia. Seeing these children healed and happy, I know this is exactly what we've been striving for." Olivia would turn to him with a tender smile and reply, "We accomplished it together, Edward. And you know what? This is just the beginning. I believe we will bring even more wonderful things into the world." Together, they looked toward the future, confident that nothing could stand in the way of the love, faith, and compassion they were spreading across the globe. The success of the Hawthorne Bennett Center continued to radiate far and wide, but for Edward, the greatest accomplishment wasn't measured by his stirring speeches, the number of new centers opened, or the nationwide acclaim. His true triumph was Olivia's radiant smile each morning as she entered the center, Lucas and Liam's carefree laughter as they played in the backyard, and the peaceful evenings the family spent gathered together. Edward realized that he and Olivia were now ready to take the next, most important step: to build a real home, a home they both deserved after everything they had endured. Quietly, he planned a very special evening, nothing flashy or extravagant, just simple and sincere, just like the love he felt for Olivia. As the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky deep red, Edward led Olivia out to the small garden behind the center, the very spot where her first appearance had forever changed his life and those of his two boys. Olivia walked slowly, her eyes bright with curiosity. She came to an abrupt stop when she saw what lay before her. A small table adorned with pure white roses, the soft glow of candlelight, and an atmosphere brimming with warmth and serenity. Taking her hand gently, Edward's voice trembled with emotion as he spoke. "Olivia, from the moment you walked into my life, and into Lucas's and Liam's, I knew I had found life's greatest gift. You're not only a strong, talented woman, you're the light that guided us through our darkest days. I never believed I'd love or be happy again, until I met you." Tears glistened in Olivia's eyes as she returned his gaze with a tender smile. "Edward, I feel the same. You and the boys have taught me how to open my heart, how to trust and love again, things I thought I'd lost forever." Slowly, Edward knelt on one knee and reached into his jacket pocket to reveal a small box. Inside lay a diamond ring, simple yet profoundly meaningful, its facets catching the candlelight. With heartfelt sincerity, he asked, "Olivia Bennett, will you marry me, build a home with me, care for Lucas and Liam, and continue spreading healing throughout the world?" Happy tears streamed down Olivia's face. She leaned forward to embrace him and whispered with all her heart, "Yes, Edward. There's nothing I want more than to spend my life with you, and with the boys." That moment became an unforgettable milestone for them both. Word of their engagement spread quickly through the center, and Lucas and Liam erupted in boundless joy. The two boys eagerly helped with every little detail for the wedding day, thrilled at the thought of having Mom Olivia by their side forever. Their wedding took place in a warm, intimate ceremony at the center, where they had weathered so much. There was no grand extravagance, only the presence of beloved family and friends, and the children whose happiness meant everything. Dressed in their finest, Lucas and Liam flanked Edward at the altar. As Olivia entered in her pure white gown, Edward was moved to speechlessness by her beauty. The boys ran to her, wrapping her in a joyous embrace as they cried out in unison, "Mom, Olivia, we love you!" Olivia knelt to hug them, tears of genuine happiness falling freely, for she had finally found the complete family she had always longed for. As they exchanged vows amid applause and heartfelt smiles, Helen, the housekeeper, watched with tears in her eyes and murmured softly to herself, "At last, happiness has truly returned to this home." Later, at the small reception, Olivia and Edward shared with their closest loved ones the profound message they'd gained through their journey. Healing never ends. It's a journey of love, perseverance, and the courage to overcome our wounds and live a meaningful life. And that journey is only complete when we open our hearts, forgive, and believe in the power of love. The party hummed with laughter and conversation. But long after the guests had departed, Edward and Olivia stood on the porch beneath a blanket of stars. Edward squeezed her hand and whispered, "You were right, Olivia. Life will always bring challenges, but as long as we face them together, every wound can be healed." Leaning her head on his shoulder, Olivia smiled and replied, "That's the greatest miracle we've found, Edward. A true home where love, perseverance, and healing walk hand in hand." They stood there in perfect peace, knowing their journey was far from over, but confident that together they could face anything. From a distance, Lucas and Liam played under the moonlight, their laughter echoing through the quiet night, warming the air around them. Olivia watched her sons and softly said, "Edward, I understand now more than ever. Healing has no final destination, but as long as we love and persevere, the journey is always worth it." Edward returned her smile. "And now, we have each other to walk that journey forever." Under the star-filled sky, they realized this was not an ending but the most beautiful new beginning, a lifetime of happiness and meaning that they would continue together, always. The story of Olivia and Edward shows us that healing is a journey without end, a journey of love, courage, and perseverance that transforms our wounds into a richer, more meaningful life. What do you think of their story, and which moment touched your heart the most? Leave a comment below and share your thoughts. If you found this story inspiring and heartfelt, don't forget to hit like, share this video, and subscribe to our channel for more meaningful tales. Thank you for joining us. May you always have a strong heart filled with love.